Welcome back to a new episode of Battle Guides featuring Magdelina. Magdelina is a defensive escalation character who uses her amazing unique ability to literally just crush everything she comes across. However, that all comes at the cost of having generally poor stats, poor range, as well as having very few offensive options. Magdelina's unique ability is Divine Conduit. Magdelina's unique ability is pretty long, so I'll just shorten it for you guys watching. Magdelina has trance counters and level cards. Now, at the end of each beat, she gains one trance counter. Then, at this point, if she has more trance counters than levels, she discards all of her trance counters and then gains a level. However, this does not happen for the first time in the entire game that her trance counters exceed her level. This basically means that you don't get to instantly become level 1. You have to wait another beat for it. Now what do those levels do? It's simple. At the anti-phase, Magdelina gains Power +1, Priority +1, and Stun Guard 1 for each level that she has, meaning that she can get a lot of stats from her unique ability. Now there are many nuances to this unique ability, and I think I'll just capture it in this one simple chart over here. This chart just tells you guys what level you'll be at specific beats. That's it. It's very, very simple. And although it is simple, it's very, very useful. You see, this allows you to plan your game. Depending on the opponent that you're up against, you may or may not have enough time to get to a certain level. Oftentimes, you may prefer to be a specific level before becoming offensive. Because, well, you have to be offensive to win the game eventually, right? So that's the big problem. When do you become offensive? When are you defensive? And that chart over there will be able to help you. If your enemy is somebody who deals a lot of damage in the early game, maybe you might not have enough beats to reach level 4 before doing that. So you might want to bump up when you're gonna get aggressive. So that means you get to be aggressive at around level 2 or maybe level 1 instead of waiting for level 4. Or on the other hand, if the enemy you're facing takes a long time to do anything at all, maybe waiting for level 4 or level 3 is a better idea, as it means that you'll have more damage and more health to work with in the late game. Now the numbers you see here will be very useful to you, and though Magdelina's trance counters can fluctuate due to the fact that she has specific styles that mess with that, it's still very useful to you. However, if you're still worried about that, it's very simple to adjust. Every time you lose a trance counter because of spiritual, simply add 1 to all the numbers on the chart. And every time you gain a trance counter because of blessing, simply subtract 1 from all the numbers on the chart. Basically, it means that if you botch a spiritual, it takes 1 more turn for you to get to those levels. And if you hit a blessing, it takes 1 less turn for you to get to those levels. Now let's head on to her styles. Magdelina is one of those characters wherein the unique ability is the meat of the cake, not just the icing on top. Though it's not that complicated at all since you just have to wait and get big. However, that does mean that it has to be balanced by having very poor styles. All of her stats usually are negative on her styles and she has a lot of lacking range. This means that it'll look really bad on paper as I show them to you, but trust me, they will be very good later on. And there are specific levels wherein your styles suddenly become decent to above average. I will tell you guys what specific levels those are, so don't worry about that. Now with that out of the way, let's start off with Spiritual. Now Spiritual is the black sheep of this kit because it has positive stats. Positive stats on a character who gains stats as her unique ability. Now if that doesn't sound silly to you, it is pretty silly, though it might look just okay since it's just a +1/+1. Remember that the unique ability gives you power and priority and stun guard. So at level 1, it actually is a +2/+2. At level 2, it's a +3/+3. Level 3, +4/+4. Level 4, plus 5 plus 5, and level 5 plus 6 plus 6. That's insane. For perspective, Clockwork is a plus 3 minus 3 soak 3. At level 2, Spiritual is a plus 3 plus 3. So, whereas Cadenza usually has to eat a hit before hitting you with Clockwork, Magdelina might not even have to eat the hit. She'll just come in and then whack you because she's super fast. This style is very scary. However, the trade-off is that if you miss the opponent, you will not gain a trance counter. This is very, very important as it can delay your levels heavily. This is very, 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 very important. You do not want to delay your levels. So I highly suggest that you pair this with things like Shot or Drive in order to get that hit confirmed this style desperately needs. Next up is Sanctimonious, and it's one of the styles that gives Magdelina range. This is very, very good at around level 2, and onward it's borderline overpowering. The thing about this though is that it gives you maximum range equal to the number of trance counters you have, meaning that it's the strongest when played on the beat that you're about to level up, and it's the weakest when played when you're just leveled up, as you'll have no trance counters then. This is a very, very, very strong style simply because Magdelina lacks range and this one gives her range. Do know that even though you might be tempted to save it up so that you have so much range, remember that range plus 0 to 2 is more than enough, as when added with any basis range, it usually results in at least range 1 to 3, which is the magic number for range. Speaking of range, what should you pair with it? Well, things that need range, meaning strikes and grasps, as these allow you to capitalize on the range very well. Next up is Priestess, and it's good at around level 2 and even better in the later game, much like Sanctimonious is. This thing is a delay style, a defensive style, like, because Magdelina is a defensive character. This one is very, very good, as when using Magdelina, you don't want to have a big life difference from your opponent, and in the early game, that's very easy to get into because your stats are just so poor. Priestess helps you alleviate that, as it allows you to on-hit reduce the opponent's power and after activating, heal 1 HP. This is very good as it allows you to delay the match further, allowing you to gain more levels without losing so much life. Even in the late game, it's still pretty good, allowing you to make sure that your opponent doesn't trade against you very well, and as well as regaining HP just in case you feel like you're about to die. This thing pairs very, very well with Drive and Blessing. Drive because it allows you to get in on the opponent really fast because of the before activating effects on Drive, and it allows you to hit them to reduce their power almost immediately. On the other hand, Blessing is very, very good because it allows you to heal a lot and, well, gain extra trance counters. Next up is Safety, and Safety is good depending on how you want to use it. It's best used at around levels 0 to 1, but stat-wise, it's good from 2 onwards. What do I mean by you want to use it from levels 0 to 1? You see, this thing has a passive effect that allows you to mitigate damage equal to your level plus 3. This means that the lower your level is, the more damage you are able to prevent with this style, and that's very, very important, as in the late game when you're around like level 3 or 4, I highly doubt anybody will deal more than 6 or 7 damage to you unless they're doing a finisher or something like that. So keep in mind that this is best used in the early game and maybe in the late game if you want to reposition yourself due to the end of beat effect. Now 0 to 1 is very important as it allows you to be more defensive and gain more levels, much like Priestess is. Now this pairs very, very well with Blessing, as Blessing has Stun Guard 3 and this has a cap of 3. You see where I'm getting at? This basically means that no matter how much damage your opponent deals to you in the early game, you are able to heal up that life difference, which is very, very good. On the other hand, it's also very good with Dash, as, well, you need to dump it in the late game because it's just that bad of a card sometimes. So this allows you to make your hand quality much better, giving you a higher chance of winning. Next up is Excelsius. Excelsius is personally my favorite Magdelina style, and it's good from level 2 onwards. This is one of Magdelina's best styles in my opinion because of just how much range and versatility it gives. It's an offensive and a defensive style, which is very, very amazing for somebody who barely has any offensive options anyway. Now, this thing is especially good at level 2 because it gains the on-hit effect that allows you to move the opponent around, which is very good for dodging opponents. And remember, the less damage you take, the more chance you have of winning because the more you are able to delay the game. Now this pairs very, very well with anything that needs range. So that's your strike and your grasp for your pleasure. And finally, we have Magdelina's unique base, Blessing. Blessing is an interesting base as it doesn't deal any damage no matter how much power plus you give it because the power is NA. However, this is very good in the early game as it allows you to heal up just in case your opponent starts damaging you really quickly. This is meant to delay your opponent's big damages on you so that you are able to delay the game and of course, get to high levels. Now, when you hit, you also gain a trance counter, which means that you further accelerate your levels, meaning that you get to higher levels that much quicker. So the more you use it, the faster you gain your levels. Now, just make sure that when you do use it, you have enough beats to get to that level anyway. For example, it's beat 14 and then you're like 5 tokens away, 5 trances away from level 5. Hitting with a blessing won't help you because you won't have enough beats to get to level 5 anyway. So remember things about that and try to do the math on your own so that you don't waste a turn doing a really bad blessing. Now, when it comes to attack pairs, this thing pairs very well with Priestess and Safety for reasons I've already explained earlier. Magdelina's 2 Overdrive Finishers are Apotheosis and Solar Soul. Apotheosis is a short-range upgrade Overdrive Finisher that allows Magdelina to instantly gain a level. This is one easy way that she can instantly, or at least feasibly, get to level 5, which is very, very, very monstrous as you can see from her unique ability. However, it does have short range, so be very careful about opponents who can dodge you really fast. However, if that's not your style, you might want to do Solar Soul. Solar Soul is a mid-range overdrive finisher that allows you to gain more damage by spending trance counters, which means that it's very, very good on the beat that you're just about to level up. Not only that, but it does have Soak too, which is very, very decent, especially when it comes to making sure that you don't die. Now note that these 2 overdrive finishers have very poor stats, much like all of Magdelina's cards. However, remember that your unique ability still applies to these overdrives, meaning that if you're around level 2 or 3, their stats become utterly absurd. Aside from that, note that personally, I don't really like using my overdrive finishers as Magdelina. I'd rather just have a cancel so that I can make sure that the style and base that I'm playing has a better chance of winning against my opponent's style and base, letting me get more damage in. Or maybe a pulse because the opponent is keeping me too far away and I can't hit them, so I rearrange it so that I'm near them, as again, one of Magdelina's biggest weaknesses is her lack of range. Now let's move on to the part that everybody loves, Magdelina Advanced Strategies and Combos. Magdelina's advanced strategies are pretty simple. There's just 2 things you have to remember. Number 1, when are you offensive, when are you defensive? Magdelina always starts defensive, and then there is some point in the game where she pivots to starting to be offensive. Note that being offensive doesn't necessarily mean that you just wail in everywhere. It basically means that instead of playing things like Safety, Priestess, and Blessing, you start playing your Excelsiuses, your Spirituals, and stuff like Drives and your Shots. This is very important to remember, as a good offense is still a great defense. Remember that if you stun the opponent or if you trade with the opponent, it's utterly fine to be offensive. Because if you stun them, you're technically healing as much health as the opponent has power because they don't get to hit you. On the other hand, if you trade, it lowers their life expectancy too, which means that it will probably scare them off of you, or at least ensure that you don't gain a big life deficit from them, which is just as good as healing, quote and unquote. This is very important and very, very matchup dependent. Depending on which opponent you're fighting, that will determine when you start being offensive. Remember when I was talking about the styles, most of them were really good at around level 2, and that's a very good basis for when you can start being offensive. Level 2 makes your styles about above average to generally average, meaning that you can brawl with the best of them. However, do remember that it depends on the opponent you're fighting and their average stats. Average power and average priority are very, very important. Why? It's simple, because you gain priority and stun guard from your unique ability. Now, say that your opponent has an average priority of 5. Plus 5, I mean, on all of their attacks. This is very, very hard to deal with, as you will almost never get an average priority of plus 5. As Magdelina's average priority is -1. Add her unique ability to that and you will see that at most you can get plus 4 at level 5, which is not good enough to be able to counter that plus priority. So look at your opponent's average power. Is their average power 2? Remember that you gain stun guard equal to your level. So, at level 2, you have enough stun guard to be able to trade with them reliably. With the power plus 2, you will trade above them most of the time. This is very important because instead of having to wait for level 5 in order to be offensive, you can actually just go to level 2 and then start brawling with them because your average damage will out-damage them. I guarantee that most of the time. So this means that depending on the opponent that you're facing and their average power and average priority, it will also change when you should start being offensive. But if you're too lazy to do that or are still inexperienced, level 2 is the breaking point. So remember that. Number 2 is very simple as well. Dash, 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 dash. As for any escalation character, dashing is so important. As basically for Magdelina, it means more levels safely. It's also very good to discard useless styles that are no good to you because they're too defensive, like Priestess or Safety. Aside from that, it's pretty good to just dodge your opponent's attacks. Get as much resources as you can and waste as much time as you can as Magdelina. Now let's move on to some Magdelina combos. Let's start off with Excelsius Grasp. Excelsius Grasp is super good. If you're at around level 2, it's not only fast, but it deals okay damage. And the thing here is that you can push the opponent so far away from you that they will almost barely hit you ever. Which means that you technically delay the game even more and gain more levels, which is very, very good. Next up is Priestess Blessing. Priestess Blessing is a good early game tactic that you can use to prevent yourself from losing super hard. Aside from that, it's, well, heals you a lot. And in the late game, if for some obscure reason you still want to heal, it's still very good in the late game since if you hit, you heal for 4, which is pretty amazing. Next up is Spiritual Shot. Spiritual Shot is a godsend. No matter what level you are, this thing will almost always be freaking amazing so long as you're at least level 1. So don't play it at level 0. This thing will deal a lot of damage, be super fast, and have so much stun guard and so much range. You treat this thing like it's freaking clockwork shot. That's how strong it is. It might even be stronger than that, depending on what level you are. However, do remember that your opponent will start trying to dash this attack pair. And if they do dash it, it's really bad for you as, again, you delay your levels by 1 turn. So remember to use this when their dash is down and use this to pressure them into dashing you. Because if they do dash you, that's still good for you because they're now delaying for you, which is amazing. And that pretty much does it for this episode of Battle Guides. I hope it was able to help you guys up your game and teach you guys a little bit about Magdelina, who is personally one of my favorite characters because I'm a Timmy player and I like seeing big numbers from time to time. Now, if this video got you interested in BattleCON or anything level 99 games related, I suggest you check the description out below because you'll find a lot of awesome websites there. If you want to talk to me or any of the other BattleCON veterans, I suggest you check the description out below because you can contact me and join our community there. Now, if you have any questions, comments, and concerns about wordings, rulings, and stuff like that, you can contact me through email in the description down below or write a comment down below and I'll be sure to answer you as soon as possible. I thank you all so much for being very, very patient with me. I was on my family vacation and it was pretty great Europe, I think I gained a few pounds because there's so much good food there. I love pasta. Aside from that, there's not much else to do. Next week, you'll see a new video for the Armory series that I'm doing, and I hope you guys enjoy that. Without further ado, don't forget your special action, and thank you, World of Indines. Thank you, and good night.